Okay, this is Mel Pierce again from Perins School in Hampshire. We are at e-learning school. Students have got one-to-one laptops, and we've got a really well embedded VLE, which helps us when we want to do flip learning out of school. It's quite easy for us to have that platform. It might be that you're using Google Docs to share things, or OneDrive or Edmodo or whatever, but you probably do need to find that main thing that you're going to use to share with students and stick to it so that it's not confusing and the technology doesn't put them off. So say if you've got that sorted, this is how a rough guide of how you might start planning your flipping episodes, what you might do. So talking about to start with then, this is just a planning sheet you could use, work about your topic, work about what the outcome is. So it needs to be learning led. So think about those Bloom's words, like you want them to explain, you want them to be able to analyse, you want them to be able to do that. And so look for those words in your scheme of work to make sure it's not just the recall stuff. You don't have to be too specific here, because here in this precise new knowledge, you will need to be really specific. Okay, to start off with then, see if when you've got your topic you can, put it into sections. Just makes you easy to sort of manage which bits you might flip, which bits you might not flip. So here I've converted, say, my topic into 4 questions, just as a rough guide. Okay, so you know, right, what you're aiming for, basically. So this needs to be learning-led, not task-led. So you're not going to do it by, right, I'm looking at my scheme of work, I'm going to go to the folder in the cupboard and look at all the worksheets that can be done, or look at the textbook. It needs to be led by those keywords, analysis, explain, those sorts of things, describe, rather than activity-led. So then you go to right to the finest detail, and you actually do need to spend time writing this down. What exactly are they required to understand from previous key stage? Okay, exactly. So they need to exactly know, I don't know, how to label the parts of a plant already and the features of what they do already before they start. And it's really useful to actually write that in precisely what it is, because it's quite surprising how you think you've got it in your head until you actually write it down, it doesn't come out. You could do this by doing maybe a Wonderwall activity once you've worked out what you think they should know. So this would be an example of, I've done a Wonderwall activity, so I put this up on the screen. So I put a topic, or I showed them a video about something, just a bit of a stimulus, and I said, right, I want you to write some questions, okay, or some statements, and then which they did, and then I want you to file them. So file them into questions that you could find out in 10 minutes. You probably know the answer, really. It's not too difficult to Google. You could probably ask a teacher, ask your friend. It wouldn't be difficult to find out those simple recall answers straight away. Then these ones may be the ones that you might have to do a practical science, or you might have to do a little bit more discussion to find out those sort of things. This is like an activity. And then answers which might need further planning. And this is really what you want to try and encourage with higher groups. What would happen if this did happen in space, or really trying to get them to think outside just the basic syllabus so they extend their knowledge. So that's how you might go about working out what their precise knowledge is, although you should be clear about what it is to start with. Then you've got to look at what the new knowledge is you want them to learn. Not just syllabus statements, but actually really be detailed about what you want them to do here. Again, and use those Bloom's words. Then you can work out which bits would be useful to be flipped. Okay, so flip being basically you do the main instructional content at home, and then you do the higher level sort of questioning and discussion and peer teaching in school. So your flipped opportunity then is could just be simply reading, okay? Could be a diagram they've got to label, could be they've got to create something online, so Blogster is an online poster making resource. You could have made a video for them, which a lot of teachers like to do to try and explain things, but be aware, just because you've explained it particularly well doesn't mean they've learnt it. There's a cartoon, isn't there? You can teach a dog to whistle, but doesn't mean he can, doesn't mean they've actually learnt it. So, and use YouTube. YouTube is great with so many places that have got those articles in. You could say you could stop it, say stop at question 3 minutes. There's a question here for you, some questions to go alongside that, or something often for them to do or prove they've done that. So that's where you might go to this So you might look at, are you going to do a traditional sort of activity? Which ones are suitable for home or in class, or an e-learning activity? So could you give them a self-marking quiz to do? You set a quiz up online that gives you the feedback. If you've got a VLE, this is so much easier because students log in. A drag and drop activity. Is there a forum where they've got to post something on? Shared note taking. So example of shared note taking would be this Poplet. So this is an online mind mapping that I showed in a previous video, and this is where I asked the students, and we actually did this in class, to do, I asked all to log in together. I had to create accounts, so it does take a bit of fuss at the beginning, to research alternative fuels. And you can see here it's got the people's names up. So someone started with the middle, so Aisling started in the middle, she's done some definitions, then someone's said, oh, okay, I'll do about biodiesel, so they've done obviously the benefits and the negatives, okay, and then they've discussed with each others. So someone's done bioethanol advantages, and you can see Heather and Katie have been communicating together to find out bits. Okay, Heather, Aisling, so it's quite nice for them to collaborate. So that could be something that you might do for one of your activities, this collaboration. So that was called Poplet. So you would need to then decide what your flipped opportunities are going to be. There's a few ideas here. The vital bit is your application. How are you going to follow this up in the classroom? So are you going to do a quick poll at the beginning? Are you going to teach through questioning? Are you going to use some differentiated tasks? Are you going to do a quiz? Just the general normal AFL techniques you do, but you don't have to do that initial instruction at the beginning. And try not to do that and go over and think, oh, they wouldn't have learned it. If I speak more, they'll get it. Think about your e-learning opportunities, which I've showed you before, so you may want to pause here to take a note of some of those. And think about your traditional learning activities. So for instance, this second question that you decide to do, this one here, might actually be better to done traditionally, and that's totally fine. Don't force yourself to do things flipped or e-learning if it's not going to fit. You need to think about the whole plan. And also one of the arguments is you maybe don't do it where they have to do their homework for the next day. Give them time to be able to do that. Hence that's why you need to plan this in. So some questions then to think about are here. What is the ability level of your students? Okay, what are the main concepts? What are the main concepts that they should already know? How will you check or reinforce this? Would you use a Wonderwall poster, something similar to that? How is the new learning that you want students? What is the new learning you want students to understand? Actually write that down. Can you group this into questions? And is there a possibility for a divergent path? So they go along and some of the bright ones go and investigate different things that's in the news. If they know this main thing, let them extend. Which of these questions are suitable for flipped learning or peer learning, or actually I need to do this one? Okay, what are your choices for home learning activities? How can you do these online things? What platform are you going to put them on? And try and keep it the same. How can you ensure students have done their work? Do you want them to take screen clips? How are you going to do that? Is an online quiz. What can you plan in the lesson? And that's really basic AFL, really, as you would do with any other good. It's just good teaching, really. It's just trying to stop that bit where you think the only bit of learning is when you're doing your instruction giving. And how can you use students to learn from each other? So if you were going to do some impact planning for this, it might look like this. Okay, so what would I like to do? What resources have I got? Have I got any e-learning things for me? How can I get that cognitive conflict and get those questions in the students? What will success look like? Okay, what will it actually look like when I've done this? Problems I may encounter and how I solve them, and then further questions. So that might help you if you're thinking of, say, doing this with another teacher, maybe for one of your professional learning groups. And this is some work we've done with an English department before, another way to plan a whole topic. So this is the topic title in the middle. This is our 3 questions we split this into. So think about your content objectives, what you're trying to get them to understand, what the skills are, assessment you're going to do. Moodle is our VLE, so because there's loads of features that really help us to do the quizzes and those sorts of things, and forums that are all in one place for us. Maybe you could use Google Docs to do that sort of thing, and some other web tools that there's plenty around to use. So here we've got the 3 questions, and this is just what we were using at the time. It was connect, activate, demonstrate, review, but you could say start a main plenary. So from this particular thing, there's various different starters they could do, various different main activities they could do. So you're sort of planning rather than everyone doing the same sort of thing, that there might be sort of choices. And that's where you might want to plan as a department one topic or a couple of teachers so that you share the resources, because it can take quite a long time to plan. Okay, so in summary, these are the questions to have a look at, but I suppose you need to start the whole thing, look at the whole topic rather than just one opportunity. I'm just going to show you one more thing, pausing for a second. Okay, this when you've done your thinking about what opportunities you want to do, then you could get it into a linear scheme of work. So often our scheme of work go, you do this, do this, do this, and of course it never happens. In my opinion, all good teachers are always behind, because you're trying to check if they know things and you have to sort of recapture them. They're not perfectly going to get your 8 lessons like just how you've planned them. So this would be your proposed plan. I'm going to get them to do this, do this, do this. And this is in actual fact what happens. So week 1 you plan this, week 2 might go to plan, and then number 3 is, oh, actually they've got a block. I didn't realise none of them know about, I don't know, the features of predators, and you might end up having to go back and put an extra lesson in here. So when you've done your initial planning and then you're planning it to here, I'd almost plan an air brick lesson, a catch-up sort of lesson within your scheme of work, where you're using your AFL to catch up on what they're doing. So do have this in mind. This is your original plan, and this is actually what happens, and you could keep notes of what they did know and what they didn't know. Because wise people say to you, oh, your NQT year is the hardest year. You know, you're planning, and when you've done your resources, it's so much easier. Yes, it is easier because you've got lots of resources, but we still need to plan because you've got different class and they don't all get things. And then you've got the battle from your head of department of keeping on time to do the tests and things. But really, you're reacting to what they know and what they don't know. To have this plan in mind, but be aware that you may need to deviate from it. Okay, I'll just go back. So here's one example that might have been filled in before, where some of them had still need to go over this, not all using this, etc. Still might need to go over that. Okay, and I'll just leave you with those main questions. Good luck.